You know that a series has a good villain when anytime that they're on screen, you just can't seem to take your eyes off of them. It's kind of like the effect you have when you see a car crash, only this time you can enjoy it without feeling guilty. What usually makes not just a good villain but a memorable one is that they all tend to have something that we can instantly associate with them. Be it their appearance or the levels of madness that they portray, they all have something to remember them by. Just don't leave these two in the same room. The way that a villain operates now hits so much harder than it once had. Rather than a character having an immovable object standing in front of them, now they're just getting hustled at 3-card Monty, only now instead of cashing cards they are now playing with both the minds and feelings of the characters and viewers. And the whole list of objectives that a villain operates on now have scaled down massively from waking up evil and planning world domination to their objectives being pulled back to a more personal level. Either something that was born of their past or, yeah, these guys have a lot of baggage these days. Hey Reiner, why did you become a Oh. Shit. This then has made for a tricky situation where one minute you can be having a good time just straight up enjoying a series, and before you know it your entire perception of everything has been flipped upside down. You're being called out for liking a character too much and can't stop thinking about that thing you did a few years back that you promised to never ever talk about again. Cause the only ones that carry their baggage are the bad guys, and that's not you. I guess what I'm trying to do is make you feel that what I'm saying is kind of right, but at the same time point a finger at the glaringly obvious changes that we've seen in how villains and antagonists are written and operate, and hopefully you enjoy it. My name is on the screen beside this big red looking button, but I'm not, and this is going to be about that time where your feelings got hurt real bad. Shit. So, why is that we've seen this trend becoming more and more popular where villains have started trading power for tears? To first do that, we have to look at the old system, how it worked and why it was used. Until recently, villains in anime and manga were always built up and touted as these massive world-ending threats. That would force the protagonists of that series to jump up and get their shit kicked in half a dozen times before eventually arriving at that final boss that had been built up over all this time. That end villain would always stand as the most immovable of all of those immovable objects that we'd already seen. And 90% of the time would also indicate the end of the story or that part of the story. This way that a series was structured would dangle that carrot in front of you from early on and keep you coming back, letting you know that there's a definitive goal at the end. And most of these series would end on the same sort of, well, it was all about the pain and massive amounts of plot armor that we made along the way type of sentiment. The thing is though, is that this sort of story gets old the very first time you've seen it, and now it's only capable of being fresh in the hands of a writer that can actually do something new with it. Which means that modern series as well as fans have been asking for something different. And now we find ourselves in this situation where anyone around you can be a villain. Yeah, your friend, well, he's a villain. That girl you like, well, she's also a villain. And that other girl you like, well, I'm sorry man, but she's actually the worst of the whole lot of them, and you've no idea what she has in store for you later. Oh, and that person over there that's obviously a villain, well, you have to call him that now, but that's your own fucking problem. What I'm trying to say is that by building a villain up in the story at first as a character, then allows for you to put people through so much more pain and confusion when you actually pull back the curtain and reveal what's been going on this whole time. Makima is no exception to this rush of mind game molesters that have been popping up lately. If you have any experience whatsoever with Chainsaw Man, then you know from that very first chapter that Denji is down bad, and also in a pretty rough spot, with next to no positive feeling or emotion present in his life at this time. But you know this. I say this because when you read it, it makes you feel sympathy for a character that you've just met, and form an emotional bond with them in the process. So at the end of that chapter, when you see him not just talk to someone, but actually get a hug, you feel that. It doesn't say straight out, but Makima is first brought in as this character that enforces a positive emotional link with us. You see the massive amounts of shit that someone has gone through, and now you see that they have someone in their life that can give them hope. And these emotions that we have at this moment are what comes back to us anytime that we see Makima. I mean, Denji gets something else when he sees her, but that's just nature. There's no need to point it out. You see, the way Makima is written is like a street performer. You're made focus on one side of whatever's going on, only to come out having lost more than your sanity and still thinking, shit, I want to do that again. Only now imagine that street performer is the first person to have ever come into your life and give you any sort of hope, meaning or opportunity ever. Like really ever. Also throwing in unhealthily unwavering crush on her, as well as the thought that something could actually happen into the mix. Then bring that all together and you're about to experience more pain than you could ever imagine. Fuck. Okay, so that is actually somewhat of an injustice as to how much writing was actually put into Makima as a character. We already know how Denji feels, but it's how the rest of the world then reacts to her that further establishes her as someone that we can kind of trust. We get introduced to Aki, he loves her. Then she comes in as the MVP multiple times in these situations that otherwise, you know, they weren't really going all that good. Throw in a few edgy interactions and then you've got yourself a fan favorite. But then it starts to unravel. Then we start to get these insights and clues from the world around her that start to alter your perception. only for Kishibe to then show us Makima is listening. This flips everything on its head because this comes at a time when the story begins to indicate that she isn't exactly all that we believe her to be. In fact, it seems like most of the world outside of us knows this. Shit, even George Bush tries to put a hit on Makima. But from that point on, everything that had been built up in our world as a truth began to fall apart, and tear everything down far deeper than it had ever been. As Makima then goes on to destroy her mind, showing the extent of how much she is enjoying it, how she will continue to do so, and how in the end she is never truly gone. Yes, it's Makima's humanity that really shows how empty she is, because as much as she provides others with these emotions and is presented to us in this one way, in the end it's this lack of an array of emotions with these big words that allow her to carry out these acts and manipulate people at will. She wants to be able to feel them but knows that she never will be. And it's this part that allows Makima to be written as pure evil, but a pure evil that's initially given to us as our hope and savior. And at the end of all of that, we can really see what Fujimoto was trying to say this whole time. That sometimes the baddest bitch is the baddest bitch. Oh, so villains now are kind of like a Stalfo, where they trap you in, but ultimately you're still into it, regardless of how weird it gets. Yeah. Askeladd then narratively is the complete reverse of Makima, because if Makima began to show herself later in this story, then Askeladd destroys us from the very start, coming in as someone who's already been touted as a potential antagonist, but over the course of the series you begin to realise that holy shit, this is his world and we're just in it. You see, it's like an episode of Chat Swap, only you neither upgrade nor downgrade. You just move from a maxed out wholesome family chat to a maxed out Viking berserker chat. Askeladd comes in as one of these anomalies where you forget that he's not even the main character of that series, and you have to actively remind yourself that this absolute showstopper is not even the central focus. So when you take all of that ability and look at the messed up, but nah, it's actually messed up, relationship they has with Thorfinn, you begin to build this really strange connection where you want to see this whole Jiraiya Naruto relationship keep on building and growing. Which is weird because it's one of these few occurrences where we spend so much time with the main villain of that series. Askeladd shows us just how much a charismatic leader can do. But that charisma is only one side of his character, as it's very much of the baggage that he carries with himself that results in him being the figure that we see now, being so bent on this desire to seek vengeance on those that have done him wrong in the past. We then see a similar narrative repeated in Thorfinn, and while he does seek his own form of justice, he never goes down that same path that Askeladd has travelled, where his drive for revenge leads him to carrying out these massively evil acts, because he just never lets himself fully adopt that mindset. It's something that's born from within that has resulted in them being very different people, all while albeit having lived very similar lives. And this kind of shows us that there is indeed another set of influences or fundamentals that exist in order for a character to truly become evil, or shit like that. Ah shit, not this guy again. Hey Reiner, you good to talk? Aye, so the man's been going through some shit ever since he realised that he's actually a villain. Reiner, unfortunately, when compared to the other two, is not pure evil, but is entirely a product of his environment and the world that he's been a part of. The common thing that we see in Attack on Titan is that whether they're a villain or not, is that everyone has been vastly influenced by the society that they live in. These environments being the entire reason why someone like Askeladd became who he is. But Thorfinn doesn't, because he doesn't have daddy issues. Zeke's dark side comes from his dad being obsessed, which in turn came from that society. Reiner then was the result of that same environment, only in this case he thought that he was doing the right thing. Then again, they all did. And the effects of this society even trickle down into Eren's life, where Eren's entire drive is as a result of Reiner's actions. Hey, don't worry, I'm not going to talk to you about Reiner as a character because there's already hundreds of videos about that topic. It's just important to show that there's so many paths that a character can end up taking. It just happens that Reiner happened to find himself in the wrong place at the wrong time again and again and again. So, at the end of all of that, we can actually see that Makima, well, that bitch is more or less pure evil. Askeladd, he chose evil, and Reiner, well, he just can't catch a break. The way an antagonist operates and establishes themselves, at least for me, has changed for the better. We seem to be getting more complex, and with that complexity, also getting better stories as a result. And we actually seem to be doing away with the old sort of I'm bad type of villain. Oh wait, Demon's villain. Basically, it seems that newer shonen series are adopting more of a seinen edge to them, as they create their characters, worlds, and villains, and it's sick. Bye.